All right, so ESPN put out this list of quarterback rankings. Now, to be fair, it wasn't just their list. They say they got this list by putting together league executive rankings, coaches, scouts, and players. Now, I don't know if Jeremy Fowler got a source from all 32 teams, how many executives, which executives from what team, coaches from what team, scouts from what team, and players from what team contributed to these rankings. So yeah, I know it sounds official when you hear it. There's just a lot of caveats that you got to throw in there to understand it. Look, man, also some of these teams just ain't good at this thing. But let's see how these rankings shake out, and let's see what everybody is up in arms about.
Quarterbacks, and they are dominated by some young guns coming up here in the league. Got Joe Burrow in there at number 5 and Justin Herbert on the way. Tom Brady rounding out what right now looks like sort of the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks with Rodgers, Mahomes, Allen, and then, of course, Tampa Tom. And there is one name that is noticeably absent from this list that we will get to in a second. But before we do that, let's just let Fowler very quickly explain, because he's here today. Again, this story literally just posted, the poll just posted on ESPN.com about 15 minutes ago. Exactly what is it we're looking at here?
Greeny, I send hundreds of texts and calls to NFL execs, coaches, scouts, some players. I tell them, give me your 10 best, 1 through 10, at every position throughout the league. We do 11 days. Today's quarterback, I have them ranked, and then I come up with a composite system, a composite ranking, and that's how it fell right there.
Okay, so basically he just sent a mass text. It was the process to this video. I mean, they made it sound really official. Essentially, he sent a mass text, one of those 2 a.m. You up, let me rank your top 10 quarterbacks or whatever. And then he composited these things and added them all up from the results that he got in. And he came up with this ranking. Now, we go through this all the time whenever the top 100 comes out, because even though the top 100 is voted on by the players, it is usually one of the most trash lists that comes out to rank 100 players, right? It's inconsistent. There are players that are super underrated for no reason. Players, they're just getting by name value, so they're just super high because they're a big name. Like, the top 100 has had its reasons. So the closer to proximity of this, I don't buy. Now, what are my issues with some of these rankings? Okay, I don't think Matt Stafford should be in there at 6. And I know people are going to give me a whole bunch of flack for this, right? Because Matt Stafford was a part of a team that just won a Super Bowl. And everybody wants to give Matt Stafford his flowers. And well-deserved. Matt Stafford was a pretty good quarterback for most of his career. And he was pretty good last year. But he's not the 6th best quarterback in football. He's not the 6th guy that league executives would pick if they had to build a winning team, especially at age 34. That just, I have a hard time buying that you would look at Justin Herbert and look at Matt Stafford and tell yourself you would want to build around Matt Stafford. Because let's be real, we saw what building around Matt Stafford looked like for 12 years in Detroit, which was no playoff wins. The second he goes to a team that was already built and he just got to do a little bit, keep in mind, Matt Stafford was a part of a team that won the Super Bowl, also wasn't even in the running for Super Bowl MVP the year he won it. Tells you that team was more about the parts around it than just Matt. Not saying Matt didn't help. Not saying that they get to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff. Not saying that. But what I am saying is that, Matt Stafford provided a service that I think you could probably get from 9 other quarterbacks. I don't think you could only get it from 5 other quarterbacks. I think that's ridiculous. But I understand. We in the mode where we want to give Matt his flowers. So we're starting to overrate Matt Stafford to give him those flowers, but whatever. So Matt should not be in there. Dak Prescott also should not be in there. Like, you can at least make the argument with Matt Stafford that, hey, he won a Super Bowl, even though it's a very flawed one in my opinion, but you can successfully make that argument and it holds a little bit of merit. What in the world are you going to tell me that Dak Prescott does better than Lamar Jackson? Like, I like Dak. I think Dak's better than what a lot of people assume. I don't think Dak's top 10, but I don't think he's super far off. But if you're talking about going over a dude in Lamar Jackson that was a former MVP, and I know people like to say that and kind of discredit the fact that he won the MVP in 2019 and act like that's really not an accomplishment. But out of these 10 guys on this list, literally Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and Tom Brady are the only 3 people who have ever won an MVP in there. And you have a 26-year-old quarterback that's a former MVP and you're going to leave him out the top 10? I think that's a bit ridiculous. I honestly do. Lamar Jackson belongs in the top 10. I don't think that needs to be justified, but everybody talks all this stuff about Lamar Jackson. Then you play him and then you're afraid of him. Unless it's the playoffs.
So now let me point out what you may not have been able to register as you look through this quickly. Lamar Jackson, who very recently was the MVP of the league, is not listed amongst the top.
You know what? One last thing I'm going to throw in here. Russ at 8? I mean, Russ at 8, and I even think Deshaun at 9. Like, I think Russ needs to prove he still has it after a bad year last year. And Deshaun, like, you know, we going to have to see what he plays. Like, I get he's young, at least, right? Deshaun 26. So you would bet that the next 5 years of Deshaun Watson, at least 4 of those years are going to be back to form. But, you know, I wouldn't guarantee him at top 10 right now. Like, you know, I can understand why he's there. Russ at 8, though, that's a little high.
I'm not surprised. I think Lamar Jackson is one of a kind. He's the first quarterback I think that we can have in recent memory to play the way that he plays and be as good as he is. So when he has a down year, I think there's a lot of coaches who are ready, coaches and executives and fans, frankly, who are ready to jump off of the ship. And I understand it's Lamar Jackson tax. It's what comes with being as unique a player as he is. So it's the tax he has to play. Any slip up that Lamar Jackson has, even though more is asked of him than any other quarterback in the league, and that team was riddled with injuries, and he had injuries himself last year, he also played poorly in certain situations. So I certainly think he's one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the world, but I'm not surprised that he's not in the top 10 on this list.
We'll bring up 2021 as if it was like this awful season for Lamar Jackson. And if you only look at the passing statistics and you only factor that in, it was not a great season. He did not have the greatest touchdown interception ratio. He threw like a bunch of interceptions right before he got injured and like was out for the rest of the season. I think he threw like 6 in 2 weeks against the Browns. So it's understandable why people look at that stat line and go, oh, he's garbage. Well, he was garbage last year. Or, you know what I mean? Like, I understand why people come to that conclusion. But as somebody who actually had to watch the Ravens all of last year because of the AFC North Talk podcast I do, by the way, shout out, subscribe to that. Yet Lamar wasn't the problem with that Ravens team last year. I mean, like, they were in first place when he got injured. When he left for that injury, they didn't win again. They didn't win a single game again. I feel like if that happened with Justin Herbert, we would be applauding him for that, right? Oh, see what happened when he didn't play? But with Lamar, it's like no matter what Lamar accomplishes, I've realized this about the discourse with him, is no matter what he accomplishes, somebody is waiting for any little reason to tell us, oh, see, that's not going to last. It reminds me of when Cam Newton was out there, right? Cam Newton had a 10-year NFL career, and every one of them 10 years, somebody was trying to tell us why he's going to fail this year, right? It just, sometimes people are so locked into the paradigms of their time that they can't see outside of it. And the fact is that Lamar Jackson, for 2 years, right, in 2019 and in 2020, and I think even in 2018, fact check me on that one. But for 2 years, I know for a fact, he was the leading rusher on the Ravens. He was the leading passer on the Ravens, and he put up some damn good passing numbers in that time. Are they going to be 4,000, 5,000 yard seasons? No. One, not the offense he plays in. He plays in a Greg Roman offense that does not utilize wide receivers well. It's well documented, right? So he's not going to be asked to do those things. But for what he's asked to do, he's been phenomenal at, and you can just point to the win-loss record when you do so with Lamar Jackson. When you look at it, when he came into the team, they were an under 500 football team or close to under 500 with the sparkles of Joe Flacco out there in 2018. He came in and the team's fortunes dramatically changed. I don't know how every year becomes a referendum on Lamar Jackson. I'm at the point to where he's obviously I think he's one of the 7 best quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't even think it's a question whether he's in the 10. I think the fact that we're doing this shows us like anytime Lamar gives anybody an inch to start to, to question it. And I think this is also playing into his contract situation. Man, people are going to take it.
He should be in the top 10. And I think that we live in a world where everything is so, what have you done just recently, right now, this past season? Last year, obviously, with the injuries, if you were to take one of those other quarterbacks, say you took Tom Brady and you took away his whole running back room and you took away a couple of the key pieces on the outside for him, he would have a tough year. He would struggle a little bit. So I think that we're looking at this in a different sense because you're waiting to see, oh, look, he's not so good in this specific situation. Oh, he didn't take him back from being down 21 points at half. Let's just say he's not a top 10 quarterback. I think personally, with the injuries that took place in the running back room, and then you look at on the defensive side, the whole team underperformed. So I'm not going to say just after one season that Lamar isn't a top 10 quarterback.
And I'll also add this to his point. Here's the thing that I kind of touched on earlier. It's selective memory to think that the Ravens were not like in contention at all last year. They were a playoff team and division leader until Lamar Jackson got hurt. That's a fact. Like, you can go and look it up. The Ravens were in like first place for the longest time until Lamar, and that's when they had offensive linemen, like their whole O-line got hurt during the year. Their entire running back room got hurt before they could play. Then they lost both of their star corners. I mean, then they lost guys on top of that. Like, the Ravens went through a dramatic amount of injuries. I know everybody gives the Titans the hype because the Titans went through all these injuries last year, but look at where in the depth chart the Ravens injuries were. They were all at the top of the depth chart for the Ravens. They weren't losing dudes on special teams roles. They were losing starter after starter after starter after starter, and it took till November for that team to fold. I think we're getting real. This happens in the offseason once we get away from what actually happened, and we can only start to jog our memory by looking at stat sheets, and then that's what we base our memories off of. But I remember that season. I remember last season. I remember watching every game. The Ravens were still in first place until November. And it only went down when Lamar went down. And they had to throw Tyler Huntley in, who played well, but he just wasn't good enough to overcome some of the things that Lamar was asked to overcome. But, yeah, I think this is real selective memory. And there is a confirmation bias that comes into play because a lot of these executives did not think Lamar would be a good quarterback. A lot of these team people thought that Lamar would be a failure. So any chance that they get to try to confirm that, to say to themselves, oh, see, I wasn't that off about it, they'll take it because it's a natural thing for us to do when we're wrong and don't want to admit it. But, yeah, I think people are wrong on this. I think Lamar is going to probably be, again, in the conversation for top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL this year, if not in the running for MVP. And I think, a lot of people are going to feel foolish for not putting. This is going to be one of them things Raven fans will bring up all year to point at the disrespect, because leaving Lamar out the top 10, that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. But that's my thoughts on this whole take. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button. But thank you for watching. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.